On a mis en place beaucoup de programmes d'audit de diversité qu'on allait faire dans les entreprises. Donc voilà, c'était une posture de conseil. On débarquait et puis on analysait tous les process, puis à la fin on leur faisait un rapport un peu plus ou moins sanglant pour leur dire voilà où vous en êtes sur différents enjeux de diversité avec des recos, des choses que vous pouvez mettre en place. Voilà, donc c'était cette posture-là qui a permis de faire travailler la diversité et de faire prendre conscience aux entreprises de tout ce que ça recouvrait. Donc par exemple, on a beaucoup travaillé évidemment sur la question des jeunes des quartiers, donc la diversité culturelle, comment on fait pour l'intégrer, tous les stéréotypes associés, etc. Mais on a aussi posé les bases de toute la réflexion sur la diversité
Hello and welcome to Property Insights by Select Property Group, the podcast for property investors looking to make the strongest investments in the UK property market. As one of the UK's leading property developers, we have huge knowledge and experience of the latest news, data, and trends for all things UK property. And so in each episode, our directors and thought leaders will talk you through the latest things you need to know about UK real estate. From the latest property price projections to new trends from key sectors, including build-to-rent residential and student property. From our offices in Manchester, Dubai, Shanghai and Hong Kong, wherever you are in the world, we want to share our knowledge with you to help you build a successful UK property portfolio. So click the subscribe button and we look forward to being your new favourite property investment podcast.
Welcome to the Property Insights podcast with Select Property Group, aiming to educate first-time and seasoned investors on the UK property market. I'm Amber Fur, today joining you from our Dubai office, and for this episode I'm joined by Hitin Ganatra, Managing Director of UK-based mortgage advisors Visionary Finance. Hi Hitin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Amber, and welcome to all the listeners today. Hopefully you'll find this podcast very insightful.
Thanks Hitin. So, today's podcast is going to be all about UK mortgages. It's been a really popular topic among our investor community, and it's certainly a topic that's seen a lot of change over the past few years due to the pandemic. So this podcast will give an overview of everything investors need to know when it comes to the UK mortgage process and what to expect when lending money for investment purposes. So Hitin, would you mind starting us off by just giving a general overview into Visionary Finance?
Sure. So we're independent mortgage advisors based in the UK. We incorporated in 2008, so we've been going for a number of years. And our sort of growth has really propelled since 2015. And since 2015, we've facilitated over £700 million worth of UK mortgages for clients and buyers based globally. So our primary market is, of course, facilitating and helping property investors who want to buy their investment opportunities and diversify to the UK market and helping them arrange their mortgage lending. We offer a very bespoke service to each and every one of our clients. So every one of your listeners today will have, specific circumstances, and our objective is to really understand their requirements, their investment objectives and their profile, and to then try and facilitate the mortgage lending for them using the vast number of lenders that we have access to. So as a firm, as an independent firm of mortgage consultants, we have over 70 different lenders that we use and have access to. Now, for international and expat clients who are looking to invest here in the UK, we have access to pretty much every single lender that is out there that can lend to international buyers. And that includes around 15 to 17 different lenders. So as clients, what they need to sort of be comfortable with is the fact that, we're acting on their behalf to try and get them the best deal possible that's available in the marketplace. And then lastly, we're a firm that prides ourselves in providing excellent customer service to our clients. So we effectively manage that entire process on behalf of all of our clients from start to finish. So once we've got the initial introduction right through to the client getting the mortgage offer, and of course, the most important thing is for the client to be aware at each stage where their mortgage application's at. So very, very big on making sure that we make our customers happy by using our service.
Okay, great. And I think, you're right, that consultative approach is so important when it comes to property investment and mortgage because, like you say, every investor's circumstances are very, very different. So you mentioned there that you have access to over 70 lenders. For our overseas investors in particular, can you provide a background as to how the UK mortgage and housing market has reacted since the pandemic?
Sure. So the one thing when the pandemic was announced, I think it was in March 2020 when investors really became, and the global markets got massively impacted by the news of the pandemic, a global pandemic, which obviously no one had ever sort of experienced. There was never ever a blueprint as to how to deal with a pandemic. We had a number of lenders. I mean, all in all, we had access to over 15,000 mortgage products. But after the pandemic got announced and we had the first set of lockdown, that got whittled down to around 7,000 products. So you can imagine lenders were very, very cautious, nervous about where things were going, where the market was going. what the impact of this pandemic would be and how long it would last. And of course, because of our relationship with a number of different lenders, we have very extensive and very deep relationship with many, many lenders. I took it upon myself to actually speak with these lenders and understand what their appetite was, where they saw the market was going. And every single lender that I spoke with estimated that the prices in the UK would fall between 10 and 20%. And therefore, the higher loan-to-value products that were available in the marketplace were withdrawn from the market simply because lenders didn't know where the market was going. Now, roll on, we're now in obviously, entering 2nd April 2022. Every single one of those lender predictions have been incorrect. It's to the extent where if we look at the statistics and the numbers, data shows that prices are actually 16.4% higher than the pandemic levels. So in essence, we've actually seen a growth in the market rather than a contraction market. And that purely comes down to supply. If we look at the UK market generally, and we deal with a lot of investors, we deal with a lot of clients who are buy-to-let landlords, you cannot get property for love nor money at the moment because just the lack of supply of properties that's available. And obviously the demand's there. And that, of course, drives up the prices. So ultimately, that's been the biggest. So if we look at the lenders and they've got a lot of these, very clever economists, etc., most of their predictions were pretty wrong. So I think if we look at the stability of the UK market, it is very, very strong. But also to add to that, if we look at the rental market as well, Knight Frank have produced a recent report which says that there's been a 46% contraction in properties available for rental, and that is also having an impact on the rental yields that are being achieved. So rents are going up, prices are going up, and so it is absolutely what we're seeing, certainly from the investor clients that we work with, is it an absolutely very, very strong market to take advantage of at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think that is something that, as you say, makes UK property so attractive, particularly to overseas investors, is really that resilience. And as you say, it's always underpinned by a supply and demand imbalance, which is what's causing property to keep defying economic conditions and expert predictions. So today's podcast then was initiated by the excellent investor response that we had from the 2 webinars that we held together a few weeks back. So clearly this is a topic that investors are really keen to learn more about. And today we're going to cover the mortgage process for both domestic and overseas investors, as well as 7 frequently asked questions that our property consultants across our global territories asked regularly. So to start us off, would you mind just explaining the mortgage process? It's something that can seem overwhelmingly complicated for someone making a UK investment, perhaps for the first time.
Absolutely. So I think that's the one thing that we absolutely been very keen to make sure is the fact that the whole journey for our clients and our relationship with Select is that we make it as seamless and as easy as possible. Now, the first objective for us is to really understand the client's circumstances. So we'd normally get an introduction over from the sales consultant that introduces the client over to us and asking us to make contact and to set up an initial consultation call, which should last anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. During that call, then, and what we can do is set it up via Teams, Zoom, a traditional phone call, or even WhatsApp. So we're very much open to helping our clients in the easiest way possible. Once we've had that conversation, and within that conversation, we'll effectively understand what the client's current circumstances are, what their investment objectives are, and a bit more about the property that they're looking to acquire. And during that call, we'll be able to quickly, our specialist consultants will quickly be able to understand which lending option will be best suited to that client. And during the call, we'll also be able to provide an indication, a high-level indication of the rates that are going to be available. Once that call's happen and the client's comfortable, we will then send a follow-up email requesting our onboarding documentation, anti-money laundering documentation, so things like passports, identity, etc., and also income verification documentation. That the client then has to effectively complete, and again, this is all done electronically, so they can send it and scan it back over to us. Once we receive the documentation, we'll finalise that. We'll go back to the lenders to make sure that the lending options that we did provide at the outset meets the lender's criteria and meets the client's criteria as well. Once we finalise those, we'll present these options to the client and explain our reasons for going with X, Y, or Z lender. Now, our responsibility is to our clients to make sure we secure them with the best available rate in the marketplace. We're instructed by our clients. So in essence, the way we start is we look at firstly the tier 1 lenders. So the tier 1 lenders are the best lenders for clients who've got the most corrective circumstances as far as the lending policy goes. And we'll present those options over to the client. Now, for example, if those tier 1 lenders aren't necessarily conducive for whatever reason due to client circumstances, we'll look at tier 2 and then tier 3 lenders. But it's safe to say that we're working on our clients' behalf to make sure we get them the best rate that's available in the marketplace. Once those are presented, client then decides on which they want to proceed with. We will then do the necessary, we'll get confirmation of that, and we'll do the necessary work to sort of finalise that option for the client, and then we'll start the application process. So again, at this stage, the client's always got a dedicated consultant that they're dealing with. Any questions that are asked go to the consultant, and the consultant's timescales of responding are within 24 hours. So in essence, we're making sure that we're keeping you updated along the way. Once, as I said, the options have been finalised, we then start the application process, and that's something that we do on behalf of our clients, get that submitted to the lender, and then it goes into the queue for the lenders to assess the application. That's what's known as the underwriting phase. And at underwriting stage, again, it will be us communicating with a lender, and if there are any additional requirements that the client needs to provide, then we will obviously communicate directly with the client for any additional requirements that are needed. Once the underwriting perspective has been completed, valuation gets instructed, and if on the basis of valuation comes back okay, the mortgage offer gets issued. So we effectively manage that process from start to finish for the client. The client's dealing with us as their advisor, as their consultant, and we then do the hard work as far as dealing with the lenders and their sort of jargon and their process. So that pretty much summarises the mortgage journey for our clients.
Okay, great. And I bet that is, again, quite attractive to an overseas investor in particular who, is really looking for that end-to-end, one-stop shop sort of approach. And just to really simplify everything that you just said, I know that you structure that as a 7-step mortgage journey, don't you?
Absolutely.
So that's 1, introduction, 2, consultation, 3, advice, 4, client checks, 5, finalised lending options, 6, mortgage application process begins, and finally 7 is when they wait for the offer.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So moving on then to the frequently asked questions. I know that you've spoken to some of our clients already, haven't you, from our Dubai office in particular?
We have, yes. We've had a number of really constructive conversations with keen buyers that are looking to sort of take up the mortgage options.
Okay, great. So I'll start with probably the most common frequently asked question, which I know would have already come up in some of those early conversations. And that is, when should I start the mortgage process and how long does it usually take?
It is a very common question, and clients are always nervous about starting too early because mortgage offers are typically valid for 6 months. But equally, because of the timescales that things are taking currently, you don't want to be starting too late where you miss your completion deadline. So typically, if I answer the question first, we normally give a timescale of between 8 to 10 weeks from our initial discussions through to getting the mortgage offer. Okay. Now, ultimately, there have been instances where we managed to get offers out within 6 weeks, but equally with certain more complex lenders or complex client circumstances, it has meant that the lenders have requested further supporting information, which means that offers have taken as long as 12 to 14 weeks. So what we typically say is that let's sort of account for 8 to 12 weeks, and that will sort of give us sufficient time to get the mortgage offer through.
Okay, great. And moving on to question 2 then. Is lending available to clients based anywhere globally? And how easy is it to open an account if the mortgage is approved?
So mortgage lending is available to clients based in most countries, as long as they're not sanctioned. We can certainly get lending now. You may recall I mentioned that there are around 17 different lenders that we have access to. A lot of these lenders for countries like the Middle East, the Far East, Europe are absolutely great to lend, and they're the tier 1 lenders that are going to be offering the best rates available. But then when you've got clients that are based in the African countries, some African countries, we may need to look to go to lenders within the tier 2 bracket, where the rates are going to be slightly higher, but they're certainly going to be cheaper than what the prevailing rates are within those countries are, and we can still get them lending. So I think it's safe to say that if you're in a specific country and you're a little bit concerned about putting a deposit down, what we can offer is initial high level sort of consultation to say that, yep, in principle, this is what we can give you, this is what we can get you from the marketplace, and this is what's going to be available. So I would not discount looking at mortgage options just based on the fact that the country that you're residing. Certainly have a conversation with us, and let's try and bottom out what your requirements are and to see what lending options are going to be available to you.
Okay, great. Question 3 then. What fees are involved when applying for a mortgage, and do these fees change for overseas investors?
Sure. So the 3 main mortgage-related fees, application-related fees, are Firstly, a lender will normally charge an application fee. Now that's probably about a couple of £100, and that's payable on the submission of an application. Okay. The second fee that's payable is a valuation fee. And again, that's payable at application. And what that is effectively is a fee that you pay for the valuation, for the lender to carry out the valuation on the property that you're purchasing to effectively confirm the purchase price and the security is worth what you're paying for it. And that again is paid upfront, but that only becomes chargeable when the valuation actually takes place. So we can actually ask to put that on hold until your case has been agreed and underwritten. So you're not paying that, it's not costing you anything up front. So the valuation fee. And then the third fee is the mortgage product fee. And that typically is not actually a notional cost to the client, because most lenders allow for the mortgage product fee, which can range from a flat fee of say £1,000 right through to 1.5% to 2%, which can be all added to the loan. So those are the three typical mortgage related fees that you'd be paying at the outset.
Okay. And on to question 4 then. What are the core requirements for a buy-to-let mortgage in the UK?
So again, depending on the client's circumstances, a couple of the core requirements are the fact that you've got to be able to demonstrate an income. So whether that's employed income or whether that's self-employed income, we need evidence of that to make sure that you're financially sound for the lender to take the risk and lend you the money. Now, having said that, where clients, we've actually helped arrange lending for clients who have got very minimal income. But then what happens is as the risk of the lender increases by lending to someone who's got a low level of income, and by low level of income, I mean, £25,000, it means that the lenders that we can have options of reduce, which means that the rates that we may be able to secure for the client is higher. But where you've got a client that's sort of got income above £50,000, £60,000, a lot of lenders are comfortable with that level of minimum income, in which case we can attract the tier 1 lenders. The other element of it is the personal profile of the client. So what do they do? What line of occupation are they in? Again, has an impact on the buy-to-let mortgage eligibility. And the rental income. What sort of rental income is being achieved on the property in order to establish whether the buy-to-let mortgage that you're going to be getting is going to be able to service the debt from the rental income that you're going to be earning.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was really insightful. And moving on to question 5 then. So what are the differences between personal mortgage and a limited company mortgage?
Sure. So from an application perspective, from our due diligence, the due diligence that we carry out at the outset, there isn't anything. So we would still go through the same process whether you're buying in your personal name or a limited company name. The difference comes in the lender availability. So I keep coming back to the tier 1 lenders. There are a few of the tier 1 lenders that don't lend to limited company buy-to-lets. Okay, so the property has to be purchased in a personal name in order for them to lend against the property and lend to you as the client. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No, that's just the lending policy. Are they not lending to limited companies for a specific reason? No, it's just the fact that they get sufficient applications for personal name mortgages, so they don't need to venture into lending to limited companies. So there's no disadvantage really. It just means that our lending options for limited company buy-to-let mortgages are slightly narrower. But again, what we do say to our clients is that, look, obtain some sound tax advice to make sure which structure is the right structure for you. There are certainly benefits of buying in a limited company name, but it could come at the cost of maybe having a limitation in the lender options. But then you need to weigh up whether the costs certainly outweigh the benefits of going down a corporate entity.
Okay, and can I just ask for some investors who might not be aware, what are the benefits of investing under a limited company mortgage?
In terms of limited company, we've had a lot of tax changes that have come into effect. I'm not a tax consultant, but what I can, based on my wider knowledge of the market, so what I can tell you is that buying through a limited company, it means that it keeps it separate from your personal earnings. So in essence, You're paying corporation tax, which is lower than, personal rate of income tax in essence. You've also got the inheritance tax planning element of it as well. So for example, if you needed to leave the property or the company to your family after, you pass away, it's an easier process and it's a more tax efficient process. So There are benefits, but I must sort of caveat that by saying that you probably need to just speak to a specialist who can effectively give you the full pros and cons of buying through the limited company wrapper. It's safe to say if we look at sort of UK investors as well, UK, portfolio landlords, a lot of them now who are growing their portfolio, who are investing new in portfolio, are moving their structures from personal to limited company purely because of the tax reasons. And of course, the government in 2000, I think it was 15 or 16, announced the fact that the write down of interest costs